In addition dun sa sinabi ni Kong Bell, no? In fact, it applies not only to witnesses, it applies even to documents which are not yet available during the conduct of pre-trial brief and during the pre-trial conference, provided we give a reasonable description of who this witness is, what will be the nature of the testimony, and what is the purpose to be achieved by presenting this witness, no? Reservation is allowed during the pre-trial, and the reason why it is being allowed is because of safety and security, that's one, in case of witnesses, and for documents, because they are not yet available.
Last na lang po on my part. Doon po ba sa motion din po na isusumiti po ng House Prosecution Panel, may anything about the issue on Senate leadership? Because I believe po, any motion, for example, to resolve kung sino ang presiding officer, because sabi niyo po, Kong Jervil, kung kayo po yung tatanungin, mas dapat pong magkaroon na ng duly elected Senate President, pero wala po kasing session ngayon, so hindi makakapag-elect ng Senate President.
You were watching my interview. For the record, the House of Representatives already recognized the leadership of acting SP Win Gatchalian. As a matter of fact, we articulated already that we will be appearing before the impeachment court initiated by acting SP Win Gatchalian, who nowadays is the one signing the notices in his capacity as presiding officer, no? I expressed that concern because I understand that impeachment is a very sensitive matter. Why sensitive? You know what happened to the first impeachment back in the 19th Congress. We are of the humble position that we complied strictly the requirements for the second mode of filing an impeachment complaint and for transmitting the same to the Senate, no? That has been the general stand of the House of Representatives. But nonetheless, you know that later on, it was declared unconstitutional by the Honorable Supreme Court, no? Regardless of our strong position. So, with that in mind, it is really my concern that I hope magkaroon na ng duly elected Senate President. If it is acting SP Win Gatchalian, well, we will welcome that. If it will be someone else, we will welcome that because that is the judgment and prerogative of the members of the Senate. The reason is we are apprehensive that we might encounter another constitutional issue because we will be starting the trial and there is no duly elected Senate President. That is, of course, while we recognize the leadership of elected Senate President pro tempore and acting Senate President Win Gatchalian. Sana ma-address na yon para wala nang apprehension ng House about another possible constitutional issue to be raised in the Supreme Court.
Just in addition to that, I think it's not only the integrity of the Senate that we're talking here. It's also for the purpose of providing clarity to the people. Because in the coming days, once the actual trial begins, we anticipate that there's going to be a huge investment in terms of the people watching the impeachment trial. So for clarity and for purpose of having a Senate without a leadership battle, it's it's our utmost understanding and plea, and if we can appeal, that the Senate would have a legitimate, uncontested leader for the purpose of clarity of the public.
Clarification lang po, sorry. So, ayaw nyo pong mag-start ang impeachment trial unless ma-resolve yung issue sa Senate leadership?
That is just an expression of our apprehension, but we submit, of course, to the jurisdiction of the impeachment court under the current leadership, no? Kung meron silang notices for hearing na, we will appear. That is just an expression of our apprehension that it will be best na magkaroon muna ng duly elected Senate President before we proceed to trial. No, I have no intention of formalizing that concern.
Thank you, Rose. We go now to Haji Camino of Brigada News.
Hi, Kongs. Good morning po. Follow-up lang po dun sa plan na or sa call na magkaroon ng translation sa iba't ibang dialect. Paano po ito gagawin? Is it through the communities po ba? It will be held sa mga communities or sa mainstream media? Paano po ba yung magiging execution po nan?
I think that's an ongoing discussion that we're having with the comms team. Kasi what we intend to provide to the public is the widest information, easy to understand for the public, for our public. No? Kasi tama pa yung sinabi ni Chairperson Jinky na in the coming days, once the impeachment trial begins, the audience will be, we will be hearing technical legal terms that are not necessarily quite understandable, easily to understand by the public. So those are the things that we also want to explore. Ang intention po talaga natin dito is mabigyang serbisyo ang ating mga kababayan na maintindihan nila ang pinag-uusapan sa impeachment trial dahil matagal na po ito pinag-uusapan at deserve po nila malaman ng katotohanan.
At gaano po kayo ka-confident kong na through these means or kumbaga way of communicating to the public, paano po siya makakatulong not just to secure conviction of course, but para po mas maipabatid sa taong bayan po yung kahalagahan ng impeachment process?
Well, unang-una para sa kanila ito kasi ang nagsasalita po dito ay ang ating konstitusyon. Ang konstitusyon, sinasabi naman po na parati po natin sinasabi na ang impeachment trial ay this is a constitutional duty given to the House to initiate and then for the Senate to try and decide. Nandun na po tayo dun sa posisyon kung saan ang Senado ay pag-uusapan in an open trial kung ano po yung mga allegations against the Vice President. Isa po ito, to remember, this is going to be the first time that the sitting Vice President will be tried in an open court, in an impeachment court. First time po ito. So this will also set the precedents in the coming years. Paano po ang ating mga kababayan, hindi lang makita nila kung ano yung actual na trial, pero kung ano yung mga pinag-uusapan na naayon doon sa spelled out ng Constitution na mga violations na constituting an impeachable offense. So, para po maintindihan ng ating mga kababayan, as a form of educating also our public, not only to provide them the services via informing them accurate information that would be easily understood by them, but it was also educating them and what are the allegations and what are the possible violations that would constitute an impeachable offense for the appreciation of the coming generations.
To Kong Jinky and Kong Bell, paano po kung halimbawang questionin ng defense team yung pagkakaroon po ng bagong ebidensya ng mga witnesses po natin? Baka, kumbaga, technicalin po nila na wala naman daw po sa House Committee on Justice hearings po yon, kaya naman sa articles of impeachment.
Well, we have said on many occasions that the evidence that we will be presenting are all either those that were in the articles, those that were presented during the Committee on Justice hearings, and all other relevant evidence that is in fact stated in the rules of the House of Representatives on impeachment proceedings. So everything will be relevant, everything will be related to the allegations or the articles of impeachment. Now, we have our pre-trial brief that we will be submitting today. Nakalagay naman po lahat dyan, except those that will be made under a reservation that we will make, but there will be at least a general description of all of the evidence that we will present. So we follow the general rule that there will be no surprise witnesses or surprise evidence. We will lay out in our pretrial brief all of the evidence that we will present or those with reservations that we are allowed to make on anyway.
Opo.
Maliwanag ang nakasaad sa ating konstitusyon. The House of Representatives has exclusive power to initiate all impeachment cases. The Senate has exclusive power to try and decide all impeachment cases. And along those lines, binigyan ng kapangyarihan ang House of Representatives at ang Senado na maglatag ng rules regarding impeachment. It is very clear both under the rules on impeachment of the House and the rules on impeachment of the Senate that they can exercise compulsory process. This pertains to the issuance of subpoena ad testificandum, to compel witnesses to appear before the impeachment court, and subpoena duces tecum, that is for the production of documents. So regardless of the fact that the evidences were produced only during the trial, the position is that is very much sanctioned by the Constitution. The purpose of this compulsory process is to aid the Senate during the trial. The same way that the purpose of compulsory process in the Justice Committee is to aid the committee in determining the existence or non-existence of probable cause. It is therefore very much legal, lawful, valid for both the House and the Senate to exercise this compulsory process for the production of documents and for compelling witnesses even when this evidence were not part of the impeachment complaint or the articles of impeachment.
Okay, last question na lang po. Sorry, sisingit ko lang po itong topic na to. Kasi in an interview po si Mayor Benji Magalong was asked regarding, may sinabi po siya na around 90% daw po ng members ng House of Representatives are corrupt. Dahil po sa, kumbaga, part na daw po ng sistema, it's a way of system na raw po na kaya masasabing majority ng House members ay corrupt. Any reaction po to this? Thank you po.
Well, as public officers and public officials, we carry responsibility when we speak about certain matters, no? Not only to give clarity to the public, but with precision. When I say precision, it has to also be backed up by evidence, solid evidence, no? So we cannot dismiss that because we also do welcome any effort from any sectors in our society to call for accountability. In fact, the House of Representatives has been standing on the principle of accountability. We've been doing a lot of committee hearings. We've been doing a lot of inquiries. In fact, the Committee on Justice is one of the examples by which we can say proudly that the House of Representatives call for accountability of public officials. But accountability also should be coupled with the observance of due process. Due process demands that any accusations made against anybody or any institution should be backed up by a concrete evidence. So it is, to me, it is quite irresponsible and irresponsible and unfair to just brush the entire institution with single stroke and to say that 90% of the members are corrupt. What about those? We should be judged based on our individual work. There are 300 plus members of the House of Representatives. Each of us are directly voted by the people. And so I think it's also as a matter of due process, because we're talking about accountability. Accountability cannot stand on its own without also complying with due process. So it is not quite fair to just sweep the entire House with one branding. These are allegations such as this should be backed by hard and concrete evidence. So we welcome those people who are calling for accountability, but it should be precise and it should be targeted to a specific individual and not to destroy the entire reputation of the House, which, by the way, as opposed to that statement, the House has been standing with accountability. We've been doing a lot of work. We've been doing a lot of inquiries in order to sort out allegations of corruption. So, to me, we understand that the mayor is an advocate of corruption, but he himself, as an investigator, he knows that such accusations should be backed up by evidences. Let me just add, if he has names, it's better to name names rather than to attack the entire institution.
Okay. Sorry po, last na lang po, follow, singit ko lang din po, sorry po. Last na lang po talaga. Tomorrow, meron pong Blue Ribbon Committee hearing na pangungunahan po ng group ni na Senator Alan Peter Cayetano, Senator Marcoleta, pero hindi po sa Senate premises gagawin. I understand parang sa labas po yata ng Senado gagawin. Any reaction na po na syempre leadership issues pa rin po, pero itutuloy pa rin po nila yung so-called Blue Ribbon Committee hearing po nila.
Well, personally, this does not reflect the position of the House prosecution team. But since you've mentioned about a separate investigation or continuing Blue Ribbon Committee, I don't think even within the Senate leadership, the current leadership now sanctioned this parallel Blue Ribbon investigation. It only validates our previous observation that this is just a PR stunt to divert the attention of the public from the issue of impeachment. Remember, the impeachment trial is a constitutionally mandated priority of the Senate right now. They have already convened as an impeachment court, and I think the people deserves clarity and closure on the subject matter that are being allegedly committed by the Vice President. So I think it's just a diversionary tactic, if you ask me, my humble observation, to create a parallel issue that actually would, in a way, sway the attention of the public. But the public knows. And the public knows that the primordial concern now of the Senate, since they have already convened as an impeachment court, is to exercise their exclusive power granted to them by the Constitution, because no agency, no institution in the government has that exclusive power to proceed with the impeachment trial than the Senate. So this is the priority of the Senate, and the people knows that this is the priority of the Senate and deserves to know the truth, and for a speedy trial also, no? So again, going back to that issue, just to give you a short answer, it only reinforces our earlier observation that this is just a distraction, a diversionary tactic, and a PR stunt.
If I may add, the prosecutors will not muddle our time with the Senate leadership issues. But we recognize the leadership of Senate President Pro Tempore Gatchalian, as this has been recognized by Malacanang, by all law schools, by law professors, justices of the Supreme Court. And there is every reason to believe the interpretation of the Avellino versus Cuenco doctrine. So, as of the moment, we have been following the leadership of Senator Gatchalian, and we submitted our pleadings before the impeachment court under his. While we recognize that it is within their right to hold such meetings outside the Senate, they may do so, of course, but then again, we follow the leadership of Senator Gatchalian.
If I may add, yung gagawin nila, perhaps you can charge that to freedom of expression. But in as far as legitimate inquiry in aid of legislation is concerned, let us remember that we have the new leadership in the Senate. Everything that they should do in order that it will fall within the purview of a Senate inquiry in aid of legislation, it must be sanctioned by the leadership. Nonetheless, with all due respect sa kanila, it is a legitimate exercise of freedom of expression.